Hello and welcome to the Schooner Pod. I'm Ty. Joining me tonight is Jameson. Bobby is unfortunately out. He's going to do something a little bit more fun and join a basketball game in person. However, Jameson and I are going to be breaking down this unfortunate loss by OU to Ole Miss, bringing us to 4-4 on the season. Jameson, thank you for joining me tonight. How are you?
This is great because, one, we're competing against the Cowboys and the Thunder tonight. And two, we're streaming to Bobby's Twitter account without him here, which is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, that's got to be some sort of, I'm sure that's against some sort of terms of service or something like that. But if Bobby is watching, I hope he's at least getting to enjoy the pod. But yes, as I
Is
said,
Bobby
James,
on Twitter Premium? No, that would be a problem. Then we'd have to say we're a parody account. I'm checking right now. I don't even know. He might pay for Twitter. Seems like a guy who's probably paying for Twitter. But I don't know. Let's talk Oklahoma Sooners. Oh, he is. Yes, he definitely is on Premium.
We could discuss Bobby paying for Twitter as well. Do you think Bobby pays for Twitter for functional or political reasons?
Oh God. See, things are gonna go off the rail without Bobby here. It's just me and Todd. This is just what you expect from this episode. But I mean, I don't want to answer that question because we've already had a bad review in the past because somehow we talked about politics. But whatever. It doesn't matter. What overall, Ty, about this Sooners game versus Ole Miss, the first half was awesome, but afterwards, I feel like whenever we've had losses and we have to podcast the next day, I'm kind of a little bit ticked off. I'm not really happy to do it. I either going to have a rant or something. To be honest with you, my mood's unchanged. That game did nothing to me.
Yeah, this one to me was kind of a roller coaster. I think we all expected, and you saw it on the weekend spread when we picked the games, we all kind of expected Ole Miss to cover that 21-point spread, which OU at least covered there. And we all kind of expected to be pretty embarrassed and to kind of get run off the fields. And really, like you said, that first half, at least to me, it gave me a lot of hope at certain points. It gave me a lot of hope for Jackson Arnold. It gave me a lot of hope for the trend that this program is on. And certainly it made it a little bit more palatable in some sense. But at the same time, it was unfortunate because I saw a little glimmer of hope there. And then it kind of re-devastated me. It gave me just enough hope to not give up on this team and then to end up giving up on them by the end of the game. That's kind of my take.
You're back to giving up on them after that second half because I still feel like some people are going to take the optimism from that first half and moving it forward, especially with what Missouri showed versus Alabama, and be like, this is still a bowl team.
I mean, it potentially could be, right? Like there are some games later on in OU's schedule. Like obviously anything is winnable at any point, right? We can win Maine. We'll probably beat Bama because they have an atrocious coach. And so it's, you have at
least
least
go on record for that one? You're going to say OU is going to upset
OU beating Bama? I could see it because LSU is also very beatable, but not at night in Louisiana. So especially if we wear alternate uniforms for that.
It's got to be the unity game. We've been saying that all year. We got to do something. If we're going into that game and we have 5 wins, Ty, and we bring out the unities, that's just our huge monkey wrench to all of the Oklahoma fans.
It would be funny. It would be funny to see people try to wrap their minds around that. I think that's a conversation for a different time. Jameson, I want to hear a little bit more about how you felt about this game while you were watching.
It's really, I was like, oh, I'm pleasantly surprised about how this game is going in the first half. But still, I was really kind of guarded. I probably had a lot of walls up watching this game. I wasn't ready to get overhyped, not get into much things because, Ole Miss's offense was kind of, their run game was non-existent. And a lot of that was because of Oklahoma's defense. But it just seems like Oklahoma's offense was doing a little bit here and there, but still wasn't potent enough to where they could beat an Ole Miss team through 4 quarters. Even though we were winning at halftime, it just felt like it wasn't enough, and the dam was about to break. So I feel like all in all, I'm happy it wasn't the worst case scenario. It wasn't a repeat of South Carolina, but that's not a correct answer as an Oklahoma fan moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you touched on some things there. For me, this was another game, and I have to give you your props for your Jackson Arnold take because I kind of saw it this game as well. For me, this was a game where I found myself re-latching on to that. Oh, if we just had some receivers back. I think there were some. I think it seemed like Jackson Arnold was clicking a little bit more, and you could see that he was limited by the tools that he had out there to receive. But before we get into that, I want to hear your take on the run game, because I know we had some fumble issues, but to me, this felt like the most. I'm trying to think of the proper term for this. The most spirited run game I've seen from OU's side so far
It's
this.
Javonte Barnes is putting it together, man. Like, he's shown, like, the beginning of the season, I was like, this dude's running with energy, but he's not really doing too much in open space. He's continuing to run with energy at the same level now into the latter half of the season. Whenever you get to this point and you're running with that much energy, you're going to get yards. It's as simple as that. He's trying very hard. And the offensive line in the run game, I'm saying the run game, not the passing game, is starting to put things together. That was the opposite story at the beginning of the season. We've been talking bad about the offensive line all year. But at the beginning of the season, we're like, you know what? They're kind of giving Arnold enough time to throw. They're doing decent, but this run game, they're not getting any holes from. Now it's almost switched. So it makes me think introspectively. I'm like, what's going on here? Why can they do okay in the run game, but then the pass game, now they're falling apart?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting and extremely counterintuitive. To me, it has to be some sort of schematic adjustments, maybe from the running back room. But when we look at it, Javonte Barnes, his long was only a 13. Tatum's long was only 14, which kind of speaks to the state that this running room is at. That we're calling this, a spirited performance. Both guys average over 4 yards per carry, which I think was more the thing is seeing more than 2-3 yard runs. Obviously, Tatum, we've now seen going into the season that he certainly has the potential, I would say, to be running back one, but he's very, very, very turnover prone, as we've seen
Too
now, and
young.
that's going to be a major thing that needs to be dealt with later on in his career. Keep in mind, he is a true freshman.
Yeah, and he can't block either. We've seen that throughout the year. He's fumbling. He's not blocking. These are things that true freshmen do. Like, when he gets the ball in his hands, like, you can tell he's got the skill. This is not a red flag. This is not something that we should put any alert up of being like, is Taylor Tatum not really that best running back in the class last year? No, that is not the case. I still think that those are things that he can develop into. And obviously, will he develop? Because people have been really coming after DeMarco Murray. That is he truly making his running backs better? But I think that's just something in general as a football player matures that you're going to get better. In high school, Ty, whenever he's playing, how many times did he get tackled and like punch the ball out where it was actually a physical Division I level player? Not often. So his ball security probably wasn't as high as it needed to be. His blocking, you don't have to run block or pass block that much as a running back in high school. These are things that he wasn't really practicing at all, and these are brand new for him as a late enrollee.
Yeah, and you definitely see, I know you were critical of that early in the season of the late enrollee pipeline. If it's going to be someone that we're going to look at to potentially play that freshman year, you really, really do want them to come in early and come in the spring and really get their feet under them on campus. But the run game it's been interesting. But that's one of the things, like I talked about in my intro, is I now see it trending in the right direction. And it has been a slog for that running back room for sure this year. And obviously, like you touched on, they are very, very dependent on the line. But I really feel like, when we really start to look at it, especially when you single out the line, it seems so counterintuitive. And I know I touched on this a second ago, but to me, it must be adjustments that are coming primarily from the running back room and from the scheme that we're dialing up for them that's creating this success. Because there's no way that the line just magically figured out how to run block better while also forgetting how to pass block and taking more injuries. So to me, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out and props to the running back room, because I think of all the position groups in total, well, that's probably the wrong way to say that. Of all the position groups, I feel like the running backs are the ones that are most consistently trending in the right direction with a little bit more certainty. We'll get into the quarterbacks here in a second, but the linemen obviously trending in the right way in some ways, but not comprehensive to what you want from a line.
Yeah, and there's only up from where the running backs were at the beginning of the season. At least it's going in the right direction. But I mean, you kind of got to give some roses to Joe John Finley. I know most people were coming into this game, including me, already with a chip on my shoulder against Joe John. So I was like, you're going to have to do a lot to really make you give you some props. And if you do really well, I might just be quiet and not really talk about it. I think for what he was given, and obviously was not perfect, I think he did a good job. He threw a little bit of vanilla whenever you needed vanilla, and he tried to do some trick plays, which I thought was great. Bauer Sharp is a former quarterback. It was only a matter of time before he threw a pass. And I mean, good for them trying these things. 2 trick plays that didn't work out. That's okay. But I liked where the offense was going. I'm not saying that I don't think this is the future for us, but at least we saw some life in this game.
Yeah, the number one thing, the best case scenario that you could have hoped for, obviously hoping for more than 14 points and a win maybe is the best thing that you could have hoped for. But the realistic best case that you could have hoped for was kind of what we saw. And it's seeing Joe John step in and see the offense. It wasn't a big step. It wasn't, an exponential step. It wasn't oh my goodness, let's give this guy the full-time job. But the offense legitimately took a step forward. And I don't mean that to be a bit, but it's, maybe some of it was game plan versus Ole Miss, and it was just easy to dial up some tape. And again, obviously, we only put 14 points on the board, and we only had 182 yards passing, 147 yards rushing.
Comparative,
right?
Comparative to what we were doing.
I think it's a good application of the eye test. I think if you have seen every OU game so far this year, you gave sort of, if you could create a scenario where there was some sort of unbiased observer who didn't know about the coaching changes, and you made them watch all the OU games sequential this year, they would have said, oh, this one, I saw some steps forward from this offense. And against one of the best or one of the better defenses that we've played so far this year, and at home for the defense, at a place that's not necessarily an easy place to go play. So I do think we have to give Joe John some credit there, because he certainly did, like we talked about, stepped in very short notice, and at least so far did not seem to be out of his depth in play calling during the game. Didn't seem to be afraid, like you said, to dial up, that little Bauer Sharp trick play that didn't work out. But I think it was appropriately timed. It didn't seem like we were calling, weird stuff out of desperation. It seemed like a good, balanced, bold game plan. And obviously things still weren't clicking in a lot of ways, and there's still a lot of things to change. But yeah, I certainly think I saw an offense that took a step forward.
Yeah, and there's only so much you can do from this offense whenever your tackles are not, blocking adequately. And I feel like a lot of the OU talk in this post-game time, probably what everyone's wanting to hear, is what the heck is this pass blocking going to do, and just keep on murdering our quarterbacks. I think we're the worst now, probably, maybe one of the worst.
Yeah, here's an important stat.
FBS.
Yeah, here's an important stat for this game. We give up 10 sacks and then another 15 tackles for loss. So, maybe 5 of those tackle for losses you could blame on a weird play call or something like that. But yeah, 20 plus tackles or downs behind the line of scrimmage. A lot of that has to go towards the line, especially when you have a quarterback like Jackson Arnold, who can break off a run here and there when given the opportunity. I think his long this game was, I forget, and I've scrolled away from it. But
he was being slithery in the pocket, Ty, and he was getting like those 1st and 10s to 2nd and 3s, which is so crucial, because this is not an offense that has the skill and potency to, capitalize off 2nd and 12, that we saw all the time in the middle and beginning of these seasons. So, I mean, the offensive line thing is very interesting moving forward. I know a lot of people have said just play the young guys, but what you saw out of Logan Howland compared it to Jacob Sexton, and whenever Jacob Sexton was in there, it was quote unquote good. But like, you can play the young guys, but how much of the young guys are going to get? Are you just going to give them all of the rope and all of the leash that they want? Because Logan Howland, his feet were bricks. That dude cannot guard Princely Umanmielen at all. And is there a point where you just keep on letting him do that? I don't think so with Bill Bedenbaugh. Bill Bedenbaugh's got a quick trigger. If you do something mad and piss him off, he's benching you.
Yeah. I will say I am probably more team play the young guys. I think we've reached the point of the season, and this is where maybe it's good that we don't have Bobby on tonight, because this is where it would devolve into an argument. But I think we've reached the point of the season where we can definitively say that it's, I won't say failure because that'll annoy Bobby when he listens to this later, but essentially a write-off season. And if there was a way to keep guys from getting psyched out in their own minds, I would certainly here's my question is, right, put the young guys in. Is it going to make a difference against Maine? Probably not. Is it going to make a difference against LSU? Probably not. Is it going to make a difference against Bama? Probably not. Is it going to make a difference against Mizzou? Probably not. So to me, I think it makes more sense as long as it doesn't burn people's, egos or their confidence and roll into the next season.
Now there's
I
the
would
big
almost
ring
prefer.
dinger. We've already
Yeah.
seen that with this team right now in Jackson Arnold of him letting the young guys go out there and giving him a very long leash. And it's killed his confidence. Does Logan Howland's confidence cut after this? Sometimes whenever you're a left tackle and you've been burned so many times on the edge outside by this is a day 1, day 2 kind of guy. I'm Princely and Manuelin, probably day 2, really good player. And whenever you get that, is he going to start jumping false start because he needs to get the gap, his outside too quick? Is he going to overcompensate and people are going to cut inside on him? And is he going to be playing this mental game because he got destroyed over and over and over in this game? You start to think about that. I've seen that in offensive tackles in the pros. And for example, I'm a Chargers fan. There's a guy named Trey Pipkins. He did that so much that they moved him into guard because he couldn't do it anymore. I'm just scared about these type of things.
I will say it's in the quarterback comparison is easy, and I do have to go back to this talking point because I know there are a lot of questions about Coach Bedenbaugh at this point, but I think with the line, it's a very different situation than the quarterbacks, right? Because with Coach Bedenbaugh, you have a guy who has over a dozen of his former players in the NFL right now. So, the question marks about him, I think it's much easier to say we can still trust him to coach guys, right? Maybe this really was, and again, I'm pro give him the benefit of the doubt here. Sometimes you just hit misses on recruiting, and sometimes that just lines up by accident. Sometimes, just things that are out of your control just happen to line up, and I think that could be happening on this O-line. We get to the quarterbacks, right? A little bit of a different situation because you don't have a proven someone that you can point to and say, I always like to make, and I know I've made it a couple times this season, right? But the Spencer Rattler comparison. With Spencer Rattler, when he's underperforming with Lincoln Riley, and obviously you didn't have proof with Caleb Williams at that point, but even hindsight is even better than 2020 at this point. You're talking about the only guy of Lincoln Riley so far that wasn't in the Heisman ceremony, then for sure he's the problem. Versus a little bit different situation with Jackson Arnold, because I don't know if you can. It's like and I'm going long on this, I know, but it's like doing an experiment with multiple variables, but you don't have control over most of them, right? With the line, we can change one variable, we can change the player, we know what we're going to get from the coaching and everything else. But with the quarterbacks, I think we're in not a very well run experiment at this point.
Yeah, and it's bound to say moving forward, whenever Jackson Arnold gets sacked this much, I think he's very happy, and I think he's got he's a good kid with a good set of, morals and internal motivation. But when you get sacked this much, and you already were thinking whenever you got benched that you might want to transfer, is there still a possibility, even though we gave him back the reins, Ty, that he's like, I can't do this shit anymore? I don't want to keep getting sacked. I believe in myself. I'm doing what I can. But if I don't have the tools around me to succeed, even though I love Oklahoma so much, I'm sorry. It's not a me thing. I have to move away because I just do not have the tools around me. And you look at this offensive line next year, do you expect it to get any better? The offensive line portal is shown this season. There's not a lot of good offensive linemen that come out of the portal. So how is it going to get fixed next season?
Yeah, and that's a tough situation too. I'm certainly not hoping for this, but I think he's probably gone either way. I think the way that OU saves him is by really knocking it out of the park with an OC hire. that is going to incentivize him to stay and make him believe that he will get developed into what he can be developed into, right? Because this is only a stop in his career, no matter what, right? Like, as much as he loves OU, it's not the end all be all. The league is the goal here. And I just worry that the timelines where even if OU could knock it out of the park with an OC hire, I don't think the timeline is going to be fast enough to be before he can get into the portal and get some better offers, more serious offers or whatever else. I just fear that the portal is going to be able to act faster than the coaching job market, especially when, and this is, I mean, I guess I intend this to be a little poignant to OU fans, but you have teams like Oregon and Ole Miss, for example, that have both shown that they can develop underperforming quarterbacks. That's not a Dylan Gabriel joke. That's a Bo Nix joke for Oregon, but they can develop underperforming quarterbacks and send them to the league, and they're great teams. And those are just two, right off the top of the head, because obviously Dylan Gabriel is there, and then Jackson Dart with his 12-year college career finally coming to an end. Ole Miss is on the mind because we just played them, but there's tons and tons of spots that are open for quarterbacks in college football coming up in the portal, and not because guys are flopping. There's just tons and tons of very senior guys that are finally making their way out of college football at this point, and there's going to be a very, very hot market for quarterback. I mean, it's going to be it's probably wrong to use the real estate term buyer's market for a quarterback, but I guess, I mean, that's what it is. If there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of schools that have a really great program already for developing quarterbacks that need a guy like Jackson Arnold who can come in and get coached up and plug and play, sort of a fixer-upper project right now. And I think he kind of knows that. He wants coaching, he wants development, and I think that OU can give that to him in years to come. I just don't know if we're going to be able to implement that infrastructure around him before other schools were able to get to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say we have no sources. This is all just fan conjecture. We're just like one of y'all. We're just spitballing here, and it does make you think that, like with what you said, Ty. I just don't know if we have what we can get. What we don't have, what we can give to Jackson Arnold to help him fulfill his full potential. That's just like the bottom line here. Unfortunate.
I mean, we currently don't. Yeah, that's not.
But even in the future, I just don't know if we can change now. Like we say, oh, this new offensive coordinator next year is going to entice Arnold to stay. A new offensive coordinator in the year you become draft eligible is not a good situation. So you're going to get a new offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, at Ole Miss, at wherever, like in the transfer portal he lands. So him staying at Oklahoma, if it's a new staff, offensive staff, which there's going to be a lot of overturn, that's almost guaranteed at this point. It's almost like he's going to a new school with a new playbook.
Yeah. I will say, I think he and his camp are smart enough to realize that he's a 2-year project still. And it is a little different when you can make good money playing college still. Like, I don't know that there's a tremendous rush. I think if he's smart, he's not going to try to do next year and then jump. I think he'd be very smart to play out his eligibility wherever he is, because we've seen that he's, still needs some polishing. That being said, he could go somewhere and be, I can't think of a college analogy, but he could be, like a Brock Purdy situation somewhere where he's just the definition of mid, but he's got superstars around him. Pat Mahomes maybe is a good analogy.
Will Howard.
Just surround a guy with superstars and he's going to look amazing. So
yeah, I hope that he is a kid, for my selfish Oklahoma fan reasons, that he can look past that and be like, I came to Oklahoma for a reason and I'm going to stick behind my decision. I'm going to be a loyal person. But money talks, situation talks, and your future talks. And if I'm Jackson Arnold, I'm throwing away my Oklahoma fandom. I'm putting myself into Jackson Arnold's shoes. I'm not staying here next year.
Yeah.
If you were Jackson, I put you on the spot. You have 10 seconds. Would you leave or would you stay?
No, there's too many options. I mean, that's what I started with, right? Like, there's too many options out there that are, nothing is a sure thing, but there's too many options out there that are just rock solid.
Yeah.
Comparatively. Like, this is you're going to put it all on green here versus, a guaranteed path to making
And
good
people
money
will
and getting
say,
developed.
oh, the wide receiver room is going to get better. Like, Brent Venables said in his press conference that like all these top 5 guys are thinking about returning next year. Well, of course he's going to say that. But really what it comes down to, it's the offensive line. And if they're not going to give him enough like time to throw, that's a problem. And the excuse I heard the most during this game, Ty, is whenever you have like the defensive line of Ole Miss, which they've got 3 or 4 guys that can be deep NFL players there.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, it's tough whenever you go against a top tier defensive line like this that's going to have day 1 and day 2 type of NFL draft guys. But is that really a good excuse? This is the SEC. That's the mindset of whenever we are in the Big 12. In the SEC, you will be playing that level of skill more weeks than not. So if you're going to say we did bad versus good competition, we should throw that out because they were that good. That is not a good excuse. We should show some life versus these guys. They should not be winning more downs than they are losing. And so that is not an excuse I want to hear anymore, because that is just a level of you wanting to be average to lower than average. And we cannot have that as a program.
And I will say, and this is, I'll be careful to preface this. This is not necessarily this year's performance, but I think all-time performance and certainly all-time recruiting performance. Like you said, this is the SEC now. If you look at the caliber of player that we're going to be playing and you look at our schedule this year, Ole Miss is probably the fifth. It might be fourth. They're probably the 5th best team in terms of historical depth and historical performance, right? Like LSU, tremendously deep all the time. Bama, obviously, Texas, and Tennessee are the 4 that I'm getting in front of them that historically you're going to have a depth of star power on the defense a little bit more than Ole Miss. Again, this is, people can cherry pick years here and there. Ole Miss has always punched well above its weight with recruiting and with star power, especially with Kiffin there. It's sort of a perfect fusion of the two. But yeah, you can't use that excuse because it's not like the Big 12 in years past where you could use that on, Texas every now and then, or you could use that on when we do a home and home with Ohio State or something like that. And then you have 1 game a year, maybe 2 games a year where you're realistically playing. Like this is a gauntlet where almost half the schedule is going to be at or above this level that we've seen from Ole Miss this year, at least in terms of star power depth. And we need to get to that level. And that's sort of, that bleeds into a lot of other issues for sure, but we need to be at that level. And that's one of the things that when we were talking about coaching conversations outside of Brent Venables early on in the season, we had sort of gotten into a debate about coaches and whether the X's and O's are more important than the recruiting. I think nowadays, at least for the head coach, it's very much about the recruiting, right? Your coordinators are your X's and O's guy. The head coach needs to be that figurehead, that guy that drives recruiting and that guy that drives, staff recruiting. Again, a whole different thing there. But yeah, we need to figure something out because it's not it's not an invalid excuse, right? Like it's a legitimate reason as to why we lost this game, but it's not something that can be.
We don't have good talent on the.
It's a solvable problem. Is the thing?
Say that.
Yeah, it's a solvable problem. Yeah, we don't have the talent. It's a reason that we lost the game, and it's a problem that is solvable. Whether or not it's solvable for the staff and the institution that we have right now is yet to be seen. But plenty of people have solved it, right? If Lane Kiffin can solve the problem, it's not that hard of a problem to solve. So we need to figure it out.
The offensive line recruiting's luckily moving in the right direction right now, Ty, on that point. Like what we've done with Fasuse and Foje, et cetera, in this class right now, this is good. But Bill Beatenbow, it is very well known that he was a late adopter of NIL and paying the guys. Whenever Texas was doing that early in the process and they were taking people, Texas A&M was taking people, we kept getting losses on these guys. We were bringing in a lot of lower end star prospects, and Bill Beatenbow has had that success in the past. He's turned guys into JUCO products like, Ben Powers, Lane Johnson, all like lower end guys like Orlando Brown, who's a low 3-star, into NFL stars who get big money
Mhm.
contracts, which is a huge recruiting pitch. But whenever you do not have the cash, the NIL to back it up, people aren't going to want to come here. And things have shifted, which is good. And that's why you've got a good class right now, because you have the experience of Bill Bedenbaugh to put people in the league, and then you have the money. People will come for money. But
Mhm.
the reality of it is, right now, you're relying on Logan Howland to come into the game, who's a 3-star developmental guy, and you can take those guys in classes, but sometimes they hit, and more times than not, they don't. Jacob Sexton was a mid, like very borderline 4-star kind of guy, Oklahoma bred guy. We believed in him a lot, but he had an ACL injury. And sometimes people's athleticism and the way that they move and their confidence is never going to come back after ACL. You're good. They never come back from ACL injuries. I'm not saying that's the case for him, but that is a little roadblock in his journey. Other tackles that we have on this team right now. You look at Spencer Brown is an absolute piece of trash, and I don't know what the heck we are doing getting him here. Oh well. Jake Taylor. This was a guy, that we believed in that to be like a solid piece, but he's been hurt the whole year. Michael Tarquin, this dude just average can be below average, and he's been at 3 schools and hasn't done really much. So we don't have much optimism moving forward in this offensive line into the future, but hopefully right now we can keep this class and change that. But I don't see this fixing next year. It's going to take maybe 2 years at the very least to kind of start to see a turn in this offensive line, because I don't see anyone in the backups that's showing at least kind of a little bit of optimism for me next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's always going to be, at the college level, people always make those massive leaps. And I am almost certain there's going to be one. But the problem is, again, that one's not enough. It's not a guy could take the leap to a first round pick out of nowhere on this line. Well, it's exactly.
Well, could
it's not,
I could go out and
matter.
accidentally win the Powerball. So I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Well, you don't accidentally. You would have to purchase a ticket.
Okay, whatever.
Get delivered at
or
you.
Verbiage.
Take accountability for something once in your life, James.
I will take accountability.
This man won the lottery and won't even take you.
That's fine.
I forgot what I was even saying. Obviously,
we're talking about anything can happen.
Yeah,
we could
it's
some
more
guys
common
can
with
develop.
receivers. Yeah, but in people will develop. But yeah, and that bleeds into a couple takes that I've said earlier is I'm pro giving Coach Bedenbaugh a long leash. I'm pro giving him the benefit of the doubt, because things do happen. And I don't think there were very many people who saw some of these guys that are on our roster right now striking out like they did. And we know he can develop people, right? Maybe he's given up or something else, all the other conspiracy theories, but he recruits so well that there is just, we need to be patient there and ride that out. But that also bleeds into, like you said, the Jackson Arnold thing.
He recruited well this offseason. The past couple, not so much.
Yeah, well, again, things can always change. But you said, it bleeds into.
He has changed. He luckily has changed.
But like you said, it bleeds into the Jackson Arnold thing. It's the realistic timeline for turning it around just doesn't line up with what he has as a timeline as a player. So, maybe it's a situation where OU needs to just cut our losses with a few people right now and then plan on a 2026 return.
Yeah, we just got someone in the comments. You guys ban people for not supporting BV. No, Ron Brown, we have been talking a lot of bad things about Brent Venables. This guy next to me legitimately has been talking bad about him for years.
Bobby has. Bobby's probably been sitting here blocking anyone that says.
I was about to say, so Bobby's not representative of the two people on this podcast right now. We've been a little bit more liberal in what
Bobby's at the Thunder game right now, policing the chat through his Twitter account.
No. Can I talk about wide receivers real quick? Because Jacob Jordan, once again, shows that he's the best wide receiver on this roster that's healthy, which is huge red flag, because that would have never happened if we didn't bench Jackson Arnold. Just remember, this was the dude that was running routes for Jackson Arnold whenever he was benched on the scout team, because that's how shallow we are. And he developed a relationship with him, and he knows how to get open. Zion Reagan, Zion Kearney, Jaquez Petaway, Brennan Thompson don't know how to get open. At least this guy can get open. And we really keep on hoping that, JJ Hester and Brennan Thompson can do things because they're good wide receivers. I think that they're okay. They're good. The problem is, for what we need with this offensive line and blocking, they are not good for us because they don't get open fast enough. They take a little bit for their routes to develop and get open. We've seen it throughout this season. Brennan Thompson's open, but we don't have enough time to get it to him, or we have a quarterback out there that isn't going to make the throw. Same thing with JJ Hester. He gets open after a long, he breaks down the play. We don't have a guy who can get off the line of scrimmage like a Drake Stoops last year and can get open within 2 seconds. And we need that desperately. And that's why Jacob Jordan's doing so well. He's getting to areas of the field where he can get open and get open quickly. And that touchdown, he went to the right place on the field and was a really high football IQ. I can't say that a lot about the wide receivers on this staff right now or on this team right now, and it makes me concerned.
Mm-hmm. No, the receiver room, obviously everyone knows the story there. And Jameson, I know this is a stat that you're going to have some talking points about, but I'm sure because of the way I prefaced this, who OU's leading receiver for this game was in terms of targets.
Was it Bauer Sharp?
It was Bauer Sharp. And right, I will put a little footnote on that. There is the potential that Joe John Finley legitimately does not understand what to do with receivers. So he was just trying to get it to the tight end bunch because he at least understands that group a little bit. But that kind of speaks to what you were saying about I'm completely blanking on the names now. On Jacob Jordan. Is Bauer Sharp's way that he fits into this pass game, or the way that you fit in a tight end to our kind of offense that we have right now, is those sort of quick, no thought, you're just immediately looking up at the first guy and dumping sort of situation.
Got to be somebody, and he's there. I mean, at least he's an athlete, right? Bauer Sharp is an athlete. He's a quarterback turned tight end, and he can get open. I know you're a big tight end guy. The dude can't block. You can't be good at 50% of your job.
Well, you could be. Are you talking about Brent Venables or are you talking about Bauer Sharp?
Yeah, I was talking about Bauer Sharp, but I guess that's also another thing. That's also another thing. But yeah, I mean, I'll give Bauer in the passing game's fun. I'm very happy with that. He does decent. It's just, but you can't. It's like you can't play Andre Robertson in basketball because he can only play defense, not offense. You can't play these guys that are just like one side of the court in basketball. No, it's a bummer. And, for the most part, when getting open, we have to play him because, first of all, we don't have enough wide receivers. And second of all, we don't have enough tight ends. So he's going to be out there and he's going to play no matter what. I'm tired of us thinking that we can let him block on the outside by himself. There was one play that everyone immediately threw Jacob Sexton under the what's the term for there? Under the bus. Under the bus. God bless. Under the bus. That's a common term. Threw him under the bridge with the troll. I don't know. What am I doing? But they immediately threw him under the bus, but it was supposed to be a wee-woo counter coming across the middle. First of all, you should not be waiting on 330 whatever pound wee-woo to cross over to block the left side whenever you have Princely and Manuelin over there going against Bauer Sharp. That is stupid. But it's not all his fault. I understand. But throughout this whole season, Bauer Sharp has shown us that he can't be that type of guy. And we, in a perfect world, Ty, we would love to try and move away from those kind of deficiencies, but we don't have anything else. We have nothing else. We're just going to be in a bad position no matter what we do, and someone's going to get exposed. So who is it going to be?
Yeah, that speaks to some of the depth. I know we have Ron in the comments here is kind of talking about it, but the depth of the injuries and everything else, it's just one of those situations where, again, when you talk about a tight end who can only catch and isn't necessarily world-class at doing that, it does beg the question of why are they out there, right? Because if you're just going to be playing someone as a receiver, if we had receivers, it would be better to just put another receiver out there or maybe another back out there who can at least, in both of those situations, you present maybe a little bit more of a dynamic threat to the defense versus just kind of watch for this guy for a short pass. Otherwise, he's just kind of a wasted spot on the field for their team when you're looking at the tape.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone commenting in the comments as well that Maine will beat OU next week would not surprise me at all. And some people will spin it and say, "Oh, it's because of injuries. We need to give everyone another chance next year and see." But
I'm waiting to see this line to come out. I still haven't seen it yet. I don't think it's released, at least I was checking ESPN bet earlier, but hopefully I'm really curious because I think I talked about it. Was it on the weekend spread? Or I think it was just with Bobby last week.
I don't recall, so it was probably with Bobby last week.
Then let me, before this comes out, or unless you've seen it somewhere else, if you
I
had
have
to
not.
guess, actually, we'll save this. Let's talk about the defense. I want to talk
It's
about
going to be
Manning here
OU
in a
minus
little bit.
2.5.
Oh my God. That's going to be a question. And I think that's wild if it's minus 2.5.
No. I mean, we can't score. Even if there was no one out there.
It's not going to be 2.5.
I want there to be an OU daily. They do the thing where they camp out some sort of journalist and they do some sort of long study on defense, and they discover that even in practice, our offense hasn't scored in like 3 weeks or something.
I mean, that's what they were saying in the offseason. It was all the time. It'd be like these practice reports where we read them on these message boards. It'd be like, "Oh, the defense looks like they won the day today," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's good." The problem is, you want the defense to do well, but at the same time, they're going against the offense. But you kept hearing the defense winning more than the offense, and it got a little concerning.
No, in practice, that should not be the case. When you're not like actually hitting people, the offense should be.
I don't know, because then the defense kind of learns the offensive plays. So I think the defense probably should win more than the offense. That's just my opinion.
I don't know. Normally, you have the quarterback. Just it's different for quarterbacks, but yeah, I don't know.
But let's talk about the defense and what you saw. I mean, we don't really have to talk too much about it because, to be honest, yeah, there are some goods, there are some bad, but we really only care about the offense as Oklahoma fans moving forward. We're not going to give you a full breakdown of this defense. The one thing that pissed me off the most watching this game, and I think this is just a given. If I watched more in depth at the defenses that play Ole Miss and their tempo offense, you probably would see it more. I feel like there was a lot of scenarios where the guys had no idea what the hell was going on, and they were not even ready and not even set. And then the play happened, and they got a big chunk play. Whenever the defense was ready, I thought they did stellar. There's a couple of things in the secondary, but the majority of the times it's just they weren't ready for it, and they were caught off guard. And I think that's just part of playing a tempo offense.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that to me does start to approach inexcusable because I shouldn't have said I don't know. I agree with the things that you saw and what you said, but that shouldn't be the case because it's not like this was week 9 of the season. Like we didn't know the offense that they were going to run, the offense that they've been running for years. It doesn't make sense to me that we weren't better prepared, especially if we're going to sit here and say, and keep in mind the defense is depending on how you break it down, but on most sort of common rankings, we have the 42nd best defense in the nation. So we don't necessarily have the defense that a lot of people think we do.
That's the total defense, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just so tough. That is so tough as a barometer of what this defense actually is.
There's a lot of footnotes to that, but at the same time, we held this Ole Miss team to not that many points compared to their potential, under 30 points. Sure, that's pretty great, but I don't know. We're giving up 300 plus yards in the air. We're giving up. To me, the unpreparedness for the hurry up just was a little confusing.
Yeah, here's my thought process on the defense and the fans' criticism, us being one of them. I feel like whenever you lose a game as an OU fan, you try to find the deficiencies in what went wrong. Of course, that is just being human. You can find deficiencies in what went wrong in this defense. If you turn on professional football every single game, you're going to find somewhere in that defense that went wrong. Even the best players in the world. Defenses are not supposed to be perfect. There are going to be lapses. There's going to be imperfections. That is not our problem right now. I feel like this defense showed a lot of great things comparative to poor things, to where I still feel pretty good that this defense can at least give us a shot. I'm not saying we're going to win versus a team, but this defense at least gives us a kind of a shot to give you just a little bit of confidence versus a team like Missouri that we could get that 6th win. So if you want us to sit here and kind of fine tooth comb over what was wrong about the defense, we can find some things like the secondary, but all in all, I think they've been pretty good this year.
Yeah, on the I mean, obviously there's a lot of perspective that shapes that. You have the perspective of OU fans not really knowing a competent defense on our side of the ball, at least for a long, long time. And then you have the perspective of just our atrocious offense, the fact that our defense is the one thing to hang on to. And then we also do have to give, and I mean, I think this shapes my opinion a little bit as well, is we got to give them credit to the number of takeaways and the number of sort of big momentum swinging plays that they've had this year. They've had a lot of them. I mean, even in games talked about in that Tennessee game, how many big momentum swinging plays did the defense have that the offense just completely squandered, immediately upon getting the ball back? They didn't necessarily have a ton of those in this game, which is not something to hold against them, but it's just something I think that, shapes my opinion, this being a little bit more of what I felt was kind of a meh performance. But you can't expect them to have multiple interceptions every game or, just big, crazy, crazy stuff. I think it was a solid defensive performance, but I'm starting to get a little frustrated, I guess, with the idea that this defense is going to carry this team or that should carry this team, because it's just not a realistic idea of what this defense actually is, one, and then what you can actually expect from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not as an angry person as I was after the Texas game, where I was going to refuse to say anything bad about this defense. But all in all, I think that they're just good. They've been good, and I think moving forward, once the offense starts to put more things together, they will look better. If the offense doesn't do that, they'll continue to look like this. I think it's really dependent on just being a part of a team. And if a part of your team is not performing to the capability that they are expected to, that the defense is going to fall as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect summation of what this defense is they're just good. They're not, they're not the best defense that we've ever seen. They're not a top 25 defense in college football this year. They're not going to win a championship for us as a position or as a side of the ball, but they're good. They're very, very solid. But it's certainly, I don't mean to be too down on them, because it sounds like I am. They did their part to win this game, just as they've done their part to win most games this year, right? Like, there's not really many performances. I mean, there's not a whole lot of performances this year that you can really blame the loss on the defense. South Carolina, the score looks crazy, but that was the offense giving
The
up
defense played
a
damn
lot of
well
those
in that
points.
game. I thought the defense for the most part looked pretty decent in this game.
Yeah.
Let's move in and kind of cap off this podcast talking about Maine, because I know everyone wants to watch the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, Thunder up by 16 now, so shout out. Let's talk about Maine, and a couple people in the chat are talking about it, and people in OUville love talking about this, thinking that there's a legit chance that we could lose to Maine. That's just doom. That's just straight up doom. I'm not listening to that, man. I don't care how bad this team is. These teams that lose to Maine and teams like that are teams that are coming in unprepared. Every single game, Oklahoma has to come out fighting for their lives. This is not a game where they're going to come out unprepared. You can't tell me that Maine's going to beat us. There's nothing you can tell me. I think that's just a poor take. I think it's just because you're sad and mad about this program that you think that all is bad is going to go bad. So just because we're not a good team doesn't mean we're losing to Maine too. I think that's just a lazy take.
Yeah, I don't think there's a realistic scenario where OU loses to this Maine team. I mean, it's one of those where we could just kind of come in with no game plan and things would be successful. I mean, the level of football that Maine plays and that Maine is used to playing is just light years away from what OU plays. So it's not something that I am really. I mean, it
This
looks like
team
the
just
line is
lost
going to
by
be somewhere in
10
the
to Rhode
30s.
Island,
Yeah,
man. Like, they just lost to Rhode Island. Everyone's like, oh, they had a good game versus Villanova last week, and oh, we're going to be scared. This team has lost to frickin' Rhode Island and Delaware in the past 3 weeks. Like, get out of town. Like, people saying that, oh, just wait. I know there's some of y'all, I believe that you're smart people, but you're just letting your emotion get to your brain whenever you're saying you think that Maine will beat OU.
yeah. There's just no way. It looks like the line is going to be somewhere in the 30s. According to, it doesn't look like there's anything super reputable out yet, but I think that's probably pretty realistic. This is going to be a game where, right, the running backs will look like they're excellent. Like it'll look like everything has come together. Jackson Arnold, I don't know that his completion percentage will necessarily jump up all that much because I don't know that that's um, necessarily a defense problem. But yards after catch, every metric is going to look so much better against this team. Like this is legitimately the worst team that will play all year. Probably the second. Yeah, it's going to be the worst team that will play all year. I think Temple would beat this Maine team.
I think Temple would too. Temple's actually kind of turned things around. They gotten a little bit scrappy. They're still a very, very bad team, but like I think they've at least developed a little bit since we played them. But yeah, I'm just not going to listen to it. We don't need to dive too much into it. Really, what we need to see from this Oklahoma team is a game that feels like one of those first couple games at the beginning of the season, where even if you do see some things that you can say, hey, I didn't like that, but hopefully it won't burn us next week. I feel like that's what we're going to have to see from this game. There's going to be imperfections, but the skill and the size that we have, I feel like is still going to trump Maine.
I will say as well, this is an important note to look at. This might be the cheapest OU game to attend in. I don't even know. I don't know how you would research this, but you can sit in the lower bowl for less than $20.
No way. Seriously?
Yeah. Looking at vividseats.com right now.
Dude, who the hell is using Vivid Seats?
That's what ESPN linked me to. So I don't know.
Okay.
It's in some of the corners, but like section 21, 20, 19, basically all the south end zone. Yeah. Even lower bowl, like looking at the south end zone, you're still under $20, just barely $1, but you pay more, I guess, with your fees and everything else. But this is going to be the cheapest OU game to attend in. I think it's got to be a long time. Right? I don't recall off the top of my head, but I feel like spring game tickets were basically that price.
Yeah, it's not.
Or is the spring game free?
It used to be free, but then you have to pay for tickets.
Mm.
The last spring game I went to, thankfully, I was comped by Schwab's hot dog for my performance in the hot dog competition because I remember not wanting to buy tickets beforehand, and luckily I was comped. Oh man, that was fun. But I think you know what I'd really like to see is a meaningful Deion Burks update this week on his injury. Allegedly, there was a setback. I want to have more details. Unfortunately, we won't get that. Brent Venables are not going to tell us crap. So I think this is just going to continue to be our wide receiving crew for the rest of the season. I don't. If he really had a setback, I don't know what's going to bring him back this year. So you could say Jalil Farouk's getting out of his boot. He might come back here soon. I'm at the point where I think these wide receivers just might call it and just scrap it up and say, let's see what's going on next year.
That's what I was going to say is not necessarily with Burks because I don't want to single someone out or start, some sort of clippable, clip to take out of context or something. But, same conversation that kind of was had with Jackson Arnold a couple of weeks ago. Is there a potential that some of these guys maybe, and I don't think this is I will exclude Nick Anderson from this because I know that he is true believer in the best receiver on this team. But with everyone else, is there a situation where potentially you're looking at, even if I am healthy, why am I going to come back?
Nick
I don't want
Anderson
to,
should not come
I
back.
don't want to
That is
associate
a
myself
definitive.
with the stank. I don't want to associate myself with, what's going on with this team. Let me at least wait and see what it's going to look like for next year. Let me retain a red shirt or a medical red shirt or something like that. And then, we got a couple of guys on this team, Burks and Anthony both are mercenaries. They're not originally OU guys. So obviously there is, limited loyalties there, and there is the potential always that he might be healthy, and it might be a situation of why am I going to come back and associate myself with this stank and potentially ruin my stock when I can go ahead and look at some options in the portal, because as receivers, especially, it's very easy to plug and play into any sort of system if you have the skill. And we have a lot of guys that have the skill that are just kind of, inexplicably out. Not inexplicably, right? Like they have legitimate injuries and they're not just trying to slow down the game clock by flopping it at this point. But
yeah, I don't think we're gonna see much moving forward. Like I was saying, Nick Anderson should not come back. He had a setback. He should not come back. Like whenever you have a soft tissue injury and you come back too quickly and you rehurt it again, like he should just shut things down for his sake. But Deion Burks, I need to hear more details. I need to hear what his injury is exactly and what's the setback. Like we thought it was an abdominal injury. What's the setback with the abdominal injury? I don't know. I would like to read into it. Obviously, I would like to see behind the shroud, but they're not going to do that in this team. I think just moving forward, selfishly, I want to see better product so Jackson Arnold can be happier, but maybe Jacob Jordan is just the guy that we're going to have to get for the rest of the season. So be it. Congratulations.
yeah.
You got anything else, Ty?
No, I will say Burks, maybe his abdominal injury was when he saw the NIL package that we offered to put him back in, and he was just laughing so hard that he hurt his abs.
Yeah. He got hurt dancing is what Ron
Would you like $5,000 to come back in?
$5,000, that'd be easy. there's an OU fan easily giving $5,000 to him.
No, that's what I mean. That might be all we can. Fingers crossed. That's all we can scrap together because we're trying to build up $45 million for something else.
It's true, Ty. The Brent Venables fire things. You start to see if we start using that money there, where does it go in our recruiting? Where do all of our NIL deals and boosters go? The money's is not infinite.
We're going to need a whole podcast for that because I have some thoughts on how OU signed that contract with that level of a buyout is a little questionable for sure, but that's for a different time, I think.
All right. Well, I think that's all I've got. We're coming up to an hour. You want to go watch your Dallas Cowboys play? They're up 10-3 right now, going into close to halftime. So
that's how they get you.
They have won all of their games on the road and lost all of their games at home this season, and they are on the road, Ty. So bring in your hope. Come on, put on your Cowboys hat and let's get to watching.
Yeah, well, I think that'll be by the conclusion of tonight's Schooner Pod. Please tune in Wednesday. I think we're going to do it if we settled on Wednesday.
Yes, it's Wednesday.
For the weekend spread. We certainly have a lot of things to talk about when we pick 10 games from across college football against the spread and see where we land. We bring our friend Boat and Blake on, and then Bobby will also be on for that one, I'm sure, with a little bit of thoughts about OU since he missed this pod. But Jameson, if you don't have anything else, I don't have anything else. So I guess we'll play the outro here and thank you all for joining us. And that has been this episode of the Schooner Pod.